I found myself back on the day when the wealthy girl spilled her heart to me. The young lady was dressed in a pristine white gown, her eyebrows soft and kind. I like you. But in the next moment, I caught her inner thoughts. He actually believes it. Gross. The cicadas buzzed in the camphor tree while people around us jeered, though it was the kind of taunting meant to ridicule. Someone beside us whistled and laughed. Amelia's been getting kinda extra lately. Seriously? The girl in the white dress paid them no mind and just stood in front of me, her demeanor gentle. Sunlight streamed through her hair, making her look like a princess from a fairy tale. Amelia, always stubborn, pressed against my bike's handlebars, standing on her tiptoes, staring straight into my eyes. Ethan, I like you. In my reflection, I saw a clumsy, tense 17-year-old boy, thin and frail in an oversized school uniform. I was stuck there, my face burning red without even checking, my hands shaking helplessly. After all, this was Amelia, the girl I had secretly loved for so long. I was about to blurt out, "I like you too," when I heard the pure-hearted girl's inner voice. He actually believes it. Disgusting. I froze for a moment and glanced at Amelia again. She was smiling softly, showing no hint of the disgust she felt inside. She waited confidently for my response. Everyone at Southridge High knew I was Amelia's admirer. Under everyone's watchful eyes, I suddenly took a step back. "Sorry, I don't like you." Amelia's face soured for a second. No one had ever turned her down before. Just then, a silver-haired girl strutted by arrogantly as if she hadn't noticed the scene unfolding. I recognized her. The notorious school bully, the queen bee of our school, and Amelia's arch-rival. I pointed at her and said to Amelia, "I like her type. You're too childish. You get it, right?" I wobbled my bike's handlebars nervously. "So Amelia, step aside." Amelia must have been confused, not understanding how the boy who adored her moments ago could now tell her to back off. She stiffened, placing her hand on my handlebars, showing a mix of worry in her delicate brows. She bit her lip and asked, "What's wrong with you?" She held onto my bike, and I was scared to pull too hard and hurt her, leaving me in a tough spot. But then, the silver-haired girl reached over and grabbed my handlebars, yanking them free from Amelia's grip with a flick of her wrist. "Didn't you hear him? He told you to move." Her voice was sharp, with a hint of chill. I glanced over. The silver-haired girl had waist-length hair, her profile sleek, yet giving off an aura that told people to keep their distance. Her long silver locks glimmered in the light, cool and rebellious. Then I heard the school bully's inner thoughts. "Shit, he's checking me out." The school bully saved me from Amelia's confession and pushed my pink bike forward. A group of boys passing by teased her. "Becca, when did you stop riding your bike?" She kicked one of them, cursing, "Get lost." I walked beside her, feeling super awkward, and mustered the courage to speak. "Hey, school bully Becca." I froze for a second before realizing she was telling me her name. She looked down and asked softly, "Do you like me?" My first instinct was to shake my head, but then I heard her creepy inner thoughts. "Anyone who uses me as a shield ends up in concrete pillars." So I nodded vigorously. Becca had a pair of charming almond-shaped eyes. Right then, she smiled, stopped walking, and reached out to pinch my cheek. Her thumb touched the mole under my eye as she slowly said, "From now on, you'll help me with my homework, watch me practice dancing, and give me rides to and from school. Treat me way better than you treated Amelia. Got it?" Even though she was shorter than me, I instinctively backed away. I was confused and asked, "What do you mean?" She casually patted my face, smiling sweetly. "It means I've accepted your pursuit, Ethan." With her silver-dyed hair, ear piercings, and a face screaming high maintenance, I suddenly thought maybe going back to dealing with Amelia was a smarter move. I followed the road back home, guided by my memories. This was the Villa District. I was 17 when they brought me back from the countryside. At 17, I didn't get a lot, like why my mom was the legitimate wife, yet I had an older half-brother, Marcus, just a few months older. Everyone liked Marcus, including Amelia. Amelia and Marcus were childhood sweethearts from the start. Even when she first acted nice towards me, it was just to convince me to donate a kidney to him. If it wasn't for Marcus's illness, the Whitaker family would have never thought of bringing me back. To them, I wasn't a person. I was medicine. But now, their true intentions hadn't come out yet. Marcus, still recovering at home, was in the garden watering the flowers. When he heard me enter, he looked up and smiled gently. "You're home late. We finished dinner a while ago." It didn't matter. I wasn't allowed to sit at the table anyway. Amelia confessed to me today. The watering can suddenly fell from his hand, splashing water on his face. He forced a smile. "Really? Congratulations." I raised an eyebrow in surprise and said, "Of course, I didn't accept. How could she ever be good enough for me?" In an instant, I was flooded with vicious, hateful thoughts from the always kind Marcus. A walking kidney bag. And he's not grateful to us. How dare he say that? Amelia only told me she'd approach Ethan. She never said she'd confess to him. This poor kid must be lying. Damn it, Ethan should take a good look at himself. So ugly. And to think they were relying on me to keep him alive. Dream on. I ran upstairs, hearing Marcus cough violently behind me. As I reached the top, the family maid, who was closer to me, pulled me aside and whispered, "Madam said there's no dinner left for you." I nodded. This was a regular thing. As I turned away, I paused for a moment, hearing the maid's inner thoughts. Poor thing. After Marcus's successful recovery, thanks to my kidney, Amelia had promised that once he was out of the hospital, they'd get engaged. And they did, not to me, but to Marcus. She endured her disgust and pretended to be friendly with a country bumpkin like me for so long, and finally got what she wanted. On her engagement day, she leaned into Marcus's arms, and in front of all the guests, with the same gentleness as when she confessed, said to me, "Ethan, why don't you take a look in the mirror?" I looked down and saw my reflection on the polished floor, bloated and overweight from the medication. A far cry from the handsome and charming Marcus. Maybe we were always worlds apart. In that moment, I felt my heart shatter into pieces. Luckily, it was all just a dream. I woke up right when Amelia confessed to me. Now, with the added ability to hear people's thoughts, I grabbed my phone from under my pillow and opened the chat app, where there were already over 99 messages. Only one chat was pinned at the top. Amelia. The 17-year-old me had genuinely liked her. Amelia's messages were still coming in, and she was probably crying from frustration. "Amelia, Ethan, I'll give..." And she was probably crying from frustration. "Amelia, Ethan, I'll give you another chance. My confession still stands. Amelia, you're doing this on purpose, aren't you? Congrats, you succeeded. Amelia, stay away from Becca, she's bad news." There were also several missed calls. Scrolling up, I saw messages I had sent. Usually long strings of texts with no response. On the rare occasions Amelia did reply, I'd be over the moon for half the day, and now Amelia was still flooding my phone with messages. With a swift motion, I blocked her, then slowly opened the class group chat. Sure enough, they were discussing this afternoon's incident. The school flower and the queen fighting over a guy. Such a boring headline. They even posted pictures from the scene. I clicked on one and my face immediately flushed. In the photo, the silver-haired girl was standing in front of me, so close it looked like she was leaning into my arms. She was staring at Amelia with a provocative look, raising an eyebrow. The chat kept scrolling. "Who's this guy anyway? Looks like a total country bumpkin. Even the heartthrob from Third High didn't manage to win over Becca. We usually can't post Becca's pictures without her permission. But she didn't say anything today. Guess it's real." I exited the chat and saw a new friend request notification. The username was BC, with a note that read, "Ethan's love interest." My heart skipped a beat. I accepted. "Ethan, I've accepted your friend request. We can start chatting now." After a brief pause, she sent a voice message. Her voice was teasing. Just friends. I tried to pause the voice message but fumbled, accidentally hitting the video call button. She answered, And suddenly her beautiful face appeared on the screen, so close that her eyelashes seemed like they could brush against my face. I unconsciously pulled my phone back a bit. A laugh came from the other side of the screen, and Becca said softly, "Ethan, why is your face so red as soon as we start talking?" I couldn't say a word for the longest time. Then, from somewhere behind her, I heard someone yell, "Becca, we want to see your boyfriend, too. It's all over the forums." Without even turning around, Becca chuckled, "Get lost." She stretched out her hand to cover the camera like a kid hiding their toy, being petty. It was pretty childish. After a while, Becca moved her hand away, the corners of her lips curling up. You couldn't wait to video call me after being apart for a bit. "What's wrong? You miss me already?" Her words were light, almost seductive. Just as I was about to explain, my stomach growled loudly. I was starving. Before she could react, I quickly hit the red button to end the call. Damn, how embarrassing. Damn, she's beautiful. It was already night, and the Whitaker family had a curfew. I couldn't leave, and there was no dinner left for me. A grown man, hungry enough to gnaw on the bedpost. I could only resign myself to lying on the bed, waiting for the hunger to pass. Outside the window stood a tall camphor tree. If it wasn't for this tree blocking the view in the sunlight, I wouldn't have been given this south-facing room. The leaves rustled, and I heard the light tapping of knuckles on the glass. I looked up to see the silver-haired girl clinging to the branches of the camphor tree with reckless abandon. One hand was tapping on the window, and the other held a full bag. With chopsticks hanging from her mouth, I quickly got up, incredulous, and opened the window. The night wind blew in like wildfire. Becca handed me the bag and pushed her wind-tousled hair behind her head. My dear classmate Ethan, Becca's version of takeout. She smiled, her eyes gleaming. How about giving me a 5-star review? Who's chasing who, Becca? The next day, Becca confirmed it was definitely me chasing her. I had to wait for her at school, run errands for her between classes, and even attend her volleyball games to cheer her on. I brought 2 bottles of sports drinks for Becca and slowly made my way to the school gym, only to find it packed, especially with boys. They were all shouting Becca and Amelia, Class 1 versus Class 3 in a basketball match. And of course, both girls were in those classes. I headed toward Becca, but someone stepped in front of me. Amelia stood there, and her nasty comment from yesterday still stung. Her expression softened slightly as she reached for the drinks in my hand. She used to do this all the time. I would run around fetching water and towels for her during volleyball or dance practice, and she would occasionally throw me a small reward. Amelia said, "Since you brought me water, I'll forgive you for yesterday." I dodged her hand and said bluntly, "Move aside." She froze. I walked past her, taking a few quick steps toward Becca, and handed her the drinks. Becca squinted, inexplicably in a good mood, and lazily said, "Oh dear, I can't open the bottle," resigned. I took the drink back, twisted the cap off, and handed it to her. Becca tilted her head back and took a sip, her beautiful lips curling into a smile as she snickered at something behind me. Suddenly I heard her thoughts, "Ugh, I can't stand people who overthink." I turned around. Sure enough, Amelia was still standing there, looking a bit flustered. Her face was red with anger. When she noticed me looking, she averted her eyes. She was upset, and I was thrilled. Becca was on fire, unstoppable, a total sports goddess. The gym was filled with cheers. Amelia, on the other hand, seemed unusually distracted, frequently glancing toward the audience where we were sitting. She looked practically crushed. Becca's team won, without any suspense. After the game, Becca walked over to me, her hair tied up in a rare high ponytail, looking radiant and youthful. I handed her some water, and she leaned down, beckoning me with a finger. I obediently leaned closer, my face and neck enveloped by her scent. Becca draped her arm over my shoulder, playfully pouting. "You watched my game, and you've got nothing to say." I blinked while the guys nearby shouted, "Becca is so cool." For half an hour, I looked up at her and hesitantly said, "Becca is cool." In the next second, something covered my head. It was Becca's school jacket, which she had left by the sidelines before the game. The scent of her soap filled the air around me. I heard someone rush over to check on her. "Becca, why are your ears and face so red? Are you feeling unwell?" Becca, rare in her embarrassment, snapped, stopping talking. Life without Amelia at the center was so much easier. My earliest memory of Becca was from the time I came out of a convenience store and stumbled upon her fighting with students from another school. I crouched against the wall, scared of getting caught in the crossfire. When it was finally quiet, I dared to look up. Becca was the only one left standing. She leaned against the wall, looking at me with a smirk. I was a tall guy, over 6 feet. What was I scared of? Okay, I was scared. Becca asked, "Got a Band-Aid?" I did. After hesitating for a moment, I walked over and handed her one. She held out her hand, showing a small scrape on the back of her pale hand, clearly wanting me to put it on for her. Becca looked down and asked, "You're from Rivertown?" I nodded. "Which class? What's your name?" Afraid she might hunt me down later, I mumbled, "I'm just the guy who's always liked Amelia. It wasn't wrong, at a high school level." Maybe no one knew the name Ethan, but everyone knew Amelia's admirer. Just as I was about to put the Band-Aid on her, Becca suddenly pulled her hand back. Her expression turned cold. She scoffed. Boring. I must have said something that upset her. She walked away, her back looking thin and unsteady. But now, surprisingly, Becca seemed easygoing. Even when she got mad, she was quick to forgive. On the other hand, Amelia always felt unpredictable when she was nice. It seemed like she really liked me. When she wasn't, she was downright cruel. Fortunately, I no longer had anything to do with her. Or so I thought, until Amelia showed up at the Whitaker house after school. I had gone downstairs to get some study guides and ran into Marcus, who was happily walking out of the piano room. "Amelia, it's been so long since you visited me," he said with a trace of complaint in his voice. Amelia stood silently for a moment before asking, "How's your recovery going?" Marcus rambled on. "I've been such a burden to our parents, but I'm okay. You don't need to worry. I'll ask the maid to cut some fruit for you. You love fruit, don't you?" Yesterday, Amelia cut him off, pressing her lips together. "No need." She looked up toward the stairs and made direct eye contact with me, staring at me, and said, "I'm here to see Ethan." Marcus froze, as if he hadn't heard her right, and repeated, "Amelia, who are you here to see?" Amelia ignored him and stubbornly kept her eyes on me. "Ethan, come down and talk." Under her gaze, I slowly walked down the stairs. I grabbed the math study guide I'd left on the table and sighed. "It's not that I'm ignoring you. I was on a video call with Becca about math problems. If I keep her waiting, she'll get mad." Marcus's face turned pale. Amelia's face darkened. That night, Marcus threw a fit, demanding to return to school. Being the family's favorite, and with his health improving recently, the family agreed. After his return to school was arranged, Marcus's mom for the first time spoke to me at length. Half advice, half threat. Her words boiled down to one thing. I was to be Marcus's study buddy. Marcus's mother said, "Ethan, don't forget that the reason you're able to attend this school is because of the resources I provided." Now, she had always looked down on me as some country bumpkin and never really took me seriously. My dad only got where he was thanks to Marcus's mom, a wealthy heiress. So her status was naturally higher. I nodded in silence. When the conversation ended, my dad finally spoke, calling my name Ethan. I turned around. He said, "Don't call Marcus your brother at school. It's hard to explain. Same father, 2 brothers, just a few months apart. Who could explain that?" Marcus's return to school stirred up quite the commotion. He had taken a break for half a semester due to his illness, but during his time at school, he had been a figure of influence. He and Amelia were in the same class, and lately, they had been appearing inseparably together. Naturally, the rumors between me and Amelia quickly died down. Marcus, backed by his parents, freely ordered me around. Living under their roof, I had no choice but to comply. On a scorching summer afternoon, I had to run errands to buy ice cream for him and his gang. By the time I returned, drenched in sweat, they were laughing with their feet on my desk. That Ethan, you can tell he's a poor kid from the countryside. First clinging to Amelia, now hanging out with Becca. Ethan's grades are terrible. He's nothing compared to Marcus. Amelia and Marcus are childhood sweethearts. Marcus? What? Ethan's grades are terrible. He's nothing compared to Marcus. Amelia and Marcus are childhood sweethearts. Marcus, what's Ethan to you? Anyway, I've never seen a kid so obedient. They laughed again, as if they had just heard the world's funniest joke. One of them kicked my desk again. Suddenly, someone said, "Hey, Marcus, Ethan has the same last name as you." Marcus's smile froze for a moment, but quickly returned to normal. Ethan is the son of our driver. My dad pulled some strings to get him into this school. I interrupted their praises of Marcus's kindness and put the now melted ice cream on the table. Marcus flicked the contents with his fingers and said, "Ethan, it's all melted. Do me a favor and go get some more." Even though I relied on the Whitaker family's money to attend school, I couldn't swallow my anger anymore. I was ready to flip the table when a sweet voice rang out. Uncharacteristically stern, Amelia said, "Marcus, that's enough." The room fell silent. Marcus couldn't keep up his smile anymore. "Amelia, you know he's—" He swallowed the rest of his words. For some reason, when he looked at Amelia, he didn't dare finish. I heard Marcus's inner thoughts. Amelia and I have been through the same thing. Why is her attitude changing? I glanced at Amelia, confused about why she was speaking up for me. Maybe they had switched tactics, one playing the good cop, the other the bad. Slowly, I said, "What's so over the top about this? You've done worse before, haven't you? Back when I was chasing after Amelia, she was awful. She once made me go buy coffee in a raging storm, and when I returned, drenched but with the coffee intact, she barely glanced at me and said, 'Ethan, the coffee's cold.' Amelia clearly remembered it too. The room grew colder, and no one dared speak. Suddenly, I felt someone's arm hook around my neck from behind, pulling me against a soft feminine body. The silver-haired girl, Becca, was smiling, but her gaze was fierce. "So this is where you've been, running errands for people." Becca scanned the room. Everyone she looked at paled. To this day, the school forums were still buzzing with posts about Becca. Her reputation as the school queen was widespread, making me run errands. Becca's voice was sharp, enunciating every word. "Are you even worthy?" Becca casually told the group to go for a run. None of the boys dared to argue. They obediently did as she said. Even Marcus wasn't spared. A bunch of them ended up drinking the melted ice cream and running laps under the scorching sun, while classmates watched from the balconies and the headmaster, bald and sweating, rushed to the track. The mastermind, Becca, stood beside me, her silver hair flamboyant as ever, watching them with an expressionless face. "She's not happy, Becca," I called her name. She turned to me, and the displeasure on her face instantly melted away. "Don't do this next time. It doesn't look good." It wasn't that I pitted Marcus and the others against each other. It was that it wasn't worth it for Becca to do this for me. Since my mom died, I'd been self-reliant and no one had ever treated me so kindly. Even though Becca was said to have done worse things before, such blatant rule-breaking could damage her reputation. Becca rested her chin in her hand and leaned in close. So close I could count her eyelashes. I saw my reflection in her eyes. "Did it feel good, Marcus?" she asked. I hesitated for a moment. It did. Becca smiled like a cat who'd just caught a mouse. Then it was worth it. After Becca stepped in, Marcus didn't dare boss me around anymore. Even at home, he was too scared to tattle. Just hearing Becca's name was enough to shut him up. Maybe what I said to Amelia had also struck a nerve because she stopped bothering me, too. Occasionally, I'd see Amelia and Marcus walking together at school. One moment, Marcus would be all gentlemanly with her. The next, he'd look at me with nothing but disgust. He must have had a natural talent for changing his expression, like one of those face-changing opera performers. but Amelia didn't seem as close to him as I'd imagined. Not that it mattered to me anymore. I had one task: study hard. Well, maybe now I had another task: helping my struggling classmate Becca with her studies. On the day of the monthly exam results, the bulletin board was crowded. I hadn't done well in the past, but during my bedridden days, I had spent all my time reading high school textbooks, hoping to retake the college entrance exams one day. So this time, I was eager to see where I ranked. Marcus and his group were crowded around the top of the board. "Marcus, you're ranked 29th in the year. That's amazing." Of course, it was amazing. The Whitaker family had hired top tutors for him. First place, as expected, went to Amelia. They turned around and saw me searching from the bottom of the list, snickering. I heard Marcus's smooth, mocking voice. Some people at least know their place, looking for their name where it belongs. Suddenly, someone tugged on his sleeve and cursed softly. "Marcus, his rank is ahead of yours." I was just a few spots above Marcus. He stared at the board, stunned, unable to believe it. Someone read my ranking out loud: Ethan, 20th. I couldn't believe it was that high. I suppressed my excitement and finally found Becca's name. She had jumped to the middle of the pack. Ethan's tutoring sessions were working. I turned around and saw Becca walking down the corridor with a group of girls, afraid she wouldn't see me. I waved and happily called her name: Becca. She looked up and met my gaze. "You ranked 300th. I puffed out my chest, proud. "You got 300th place, Becca." Becca's steps faltered, and the girls around her started teasing her, nudging her with their elbows. "Becca, the guy you like is so cute." Becca looked at me, and under everyone's watchful eyes, her face turned bright red in an instant. I heard Becca's inner voice, a little annoyed. Damn it, he's way too good at flirting. Many people liked Becca, but most admired her from afar due to her bad reputation. However, today, one of the few who openly liked her came to find me. It was David, the heartthrob from the neighboring Third High, who had acted in a few well-known youth dramas. I had heard that Becca had once fought for him, but for some reason, they never got together. Early in the morning, David was waiting for me at the school gate. Becca and I usually went to school together now, but today she had gone to the convenience store, and I was waiting for her at the gate. I never expected David to show up first. David was good-looking, in that bad boy kind of way. "You must be Ethan," he said. I nodded. David got straight to the point. "You can't win against me, so just stay away from Becca. Becca's cold on the outside, but kind on the inside. And sometimes she just pities people, which can give the wrong impression. Besides, it was all over the forums last night. If I were you, I'd be too ashamed to show my face at school. Becca's only interested in you for the moment. If you keep pushing, you'll only embarrass yourself." Forums? What forums? Before I could respond, David's eyes lit up as he looked past me, calling out, "Becca!" Before I could react, a cup of soy milk and a bun were shoved into my hands, and the silver-haired girl appeared at my side, biting on a carton of milk, stuffing a handful of candy into my pocket, and zipping up my half-open backpack. Becca didn't even look at David and mumbled through the milk carton, "What are you talking about?" Her actions were so smooth, as if she had done them countless times before. David stared at Becca's hand as she zipped up my bag, his face turning pale. "Becca, you don't let anyone get that close to you. How can you do these things for him?" Becca rolled her eyes in exasperation and spat out 2 words. "Who are you?" It turns out being a celebrity doesn't help with mental resilience. Becca's few words left David devastated. Rebecca's few words left David devastated. As Becca and I walked toward the school, she suddenly spoke, her tone proud. "I don't know him. I never fought for him either. Those were just rumors. The only person I've ever stood up for is you." I was taken aback, realizing that Becca was explaining herself to me. I looked up at Becca, her light-colored hair making her skin appear even paler. She lazily added, "I'm not like some people who liked someone else before liking me." Luckily, they realized their mistake in time. I wasn't sure who she was throwing shade at, But in the end, she shot me a glance and teased, "Right, Ethan." After the morning's drama, I couldn't shake a sense of unease. As soon as I walked into school, I felt something was off. It was especially noticeable during the breaks. People's stares were odd, and I could hear the thoughts around me. Ethan is actually an illegitimate child. No wonder he's two-timing. It's in his blood. If I were him, I wouldn't dare show my face in front of Marcus, let alone attend the same school. Oh my God, so disgusting. I realized what had happened and quickly checked my phone in the bathroom. Sure enough, there was a trending post on the forum exposing Ethan as the illegitimate child of a wealthy family who's two-timing. It was anonymous, written by someone claiming to be a regular classmate who couldn't stand Ethan anymore. It presented a twisted, dramatic version of my life, turning everything upside down. It claimed Marcus's parents were the true, loving couple, while my mother had schemed to marry into the Whitaker family by having me. It painted Marcus as the innocent victim, sick because of my mother's actions, while I shamelessly pursued both Amelia and Becca at the same time. No need to look at the comments. They were all insults. I was so angry my head felt foggy. None of it was true in reality. It was Marcus's mother who had set her sights on my dad when he was newly married. She became the other woman, and eventually, they ran off together. My dad never looked back, leaving us behind. My mother, even until her death, still hoped he would change his mind. I left the bathroom and washed my face at the sink. Someone handed me a tissue. It was Amelia. She spoke softly. "I've already asked someone to handle the forum post. Don't worry." I looked at her reflection in the mirror, her white shirt and gentle expression. "You knew about this all along." I was referring to the content in the post. Amelia closed her eyes briefly, a self-loathing look on her face, and nodded. "I'll make sure this is suppressed. No one will talk about your background anymore. Don't be mad at me, Ethan. Once this blows over, let's just pretend it never happened." She didn't even bother asking me if it was true. She had already assumed it was a fact. She opened her eyes again, looking at me softly. "You see, I've been helping you from the moment we first met. Come back to me, Ethan." I wiped my face, threw the tissue in the trash, and turned to her calmly. "Amelia, I'm not an illegitimate child. From the moment we first met, Amelia had always helped me. When I first arrived here, I couldn't even find the Whitaker family's house and got lost in the Villa district, chased all over by some neighbor's dog. My mom had died of rabies, so I had always been terrified of dogs. That day, it had started raining. I ran and dropped all my ragged belongings along the way. The dog knocked me down, but then I heard a whistle, and the dog immediately jumped off me, happily running away. As I shakily gathered my things in the rain, tears streaming down my face, an umbrella appeared above me. The hand holding the umbrella was slender, and the girl standing there in a white dress was cold and elegant. For a moment, I felt ashamed of myself. "Did you chase the dog away? Did you save me? What's your name?" She said, "I'm Amelia." After that, I lived under the Whitaker family's roof, ignored at school, but Amelia always helped me. I stuck by her side. Maybe even I couldn't tell if what I felt for her was love. After all, from the start, she had her own motives. Amelia was complicated. Sometimes I thought she liked me. She even wrote her name in my textbooks. But the next second, she'd get mad and scratch it out. I always knew she was disgusted by something about me, but I never knew what. Now I understood. She had always believed I was an illegitimate child, that the blood in my veins was dirty. Loving Amelia was worse than loving a dog. I walked straight to Class 1's door and, as expected, found a crowd gathered around Marcus. He looked forlorn and pitiful, while everyone around him was busy comforting him. When they saw me standing at the door, they glared at me. Thanks to Becca's intervention last time, no one dared to insult me openly. Afraid of getting on the wrong side of the school queen, Marcus had always put on a good front with me. But lately, something had changed. First, he'd made a fuss about returning to school. Then there was the ice cream incident. Our pretense of civility was completely shattered. He looked up at me, his eyes red, his knuckles white from clenching his fists. Ethan, can't you leave my family alone? I heard his inner thoughts again, half angry, half hurt. Marcus was thinking, Amelia just went to see him. He used to hate illegitimate children as much as I did. How did things end up like this? Leaning against the wall, I chuckled. Of course not. Marcus's expression froze. I chuckled again. Of course not. I walked over, placing my hand on his desk, looking down at him. That post is a pack of lies. I'm not an illegitimate child. The other child born from an affair is someone else. Marcus had been kept in the dark by his parents and genuinely believed his mother was the rightful wife. That's why he harbored so much hostility toward me. Now, hearing this, he instinctively snapped back. What proof do you have? I shook my head and straightened up, looking at him with a hint of contempt. I don't need proof. Whoever makes accusations has to provide the evidence. The innocent don't have to prove their innocence. I added, I'll call the police. Justice will give me the answer. Did the person who posted that rumor think anonymity would protect them from responsibility? Marcus's face turned pale. Before I could call the police, justice arrived on its own. Someone muttered, the forum's anonymous feature just went offline. The person next to me was hiding their phone behind a book, reading the post. The name of the poster was now clear. Class 1's Marcus. The looks people gave Marcus were strange. After comforting him for so long, they realized he had written the post himself. What a two-faced act. Marcus. With his thin skin, he blushed furiously and fainted from the stress. In the VIP ward, Marcus had just come out of dialysis looking pale. While the nurse was bustling around and his mother fed him pre-cut fruit, I was getting scolded by Whitaker's father. Ethan, I'm really disappointed in you. Is this how you repay us? By making your brother so angry that he ends up in the hospital? He didn't say anything about what Marcus had done. I lowered my eyes in annoyance, staring at the spotless floor, and thought about the time I was left alone in the hospital. After giving Marcus a kidney, their attitude toward me had turned cold. When I first came here, I wanted to show my long-lost biological father that I could be an excellent son, but things didn't go as planned. Fortunately, I had stopped caring a long time ago. I've heard the whole situation. I also heard you want to call the police. That's ridiculous. You shouldn't go back to school. After all, those are Marcus's classmates, and this will affect him badly. I'll arrange for you to transfer. Realizing his tone was too harsh, Whitaker's father softened his voice. We're family, Ethan. Try to understand and show some consideration. All right, no. I shook my head. Whitaker's father was stunned. This was the first time I had ever refused him. What did you just say? He asked harshly. My throat felt dry. The atmosphere in the room turned tense. The door opened suddenly, and a group of people crowded in, with the silver-haired girl standing at the entrance. She spread her hands. Ethan, come here. I quickly walked toward her, lowering my voice. Why are you here? Becca placed her hand on my back. I didn't want them giving you a hard time. I'm here to back you up. Whitaker's father clearly recognized Becca, and a hint of flattery appeared on his face. I had no doubt he was about to ask me to help him connect with her. I let out a breath, feeling oddly emboldened, and repeated, No, I will report it to the police. I'm not donating another kidney, and whether Marcus lives or dies has nothing to do with me. You're lucky I haven't punched any of you yet. I turned to look at Marcus, who was clutching his blanket in panic. Marcus's hatred toward me stemmed from being a half-sibling, from Amelia, and from his jealousy over my health. I shattered the dream he had been living in for years. Marcus, your mom is a full-blown mistress. Your dad, he had an affair while married. Marcus, you're the illegitimate child from that post you wrote. After saying my piece, I left the ward, leaving chaos behind. I sat in the hospital corridor when someone suddenly squatted in front of me. Becca and her crew had lingered by the ward's door for a while longer. I didn't need to ask to know they were covering for me. If it weren't for her, I wouldn't have gotten away so easily today. I had always been spineless, and now I even needed a girl to clean up after me. I clenched my hands and looked into Becca's eyes. Thank you, Becca. Sunlight filtered through, making her features look even clearer. After hesitating for a moment, I asked, "Why are you so good to me?" Becca rested her chin in her hand and smiled. "Are you flirting or asking me seriously?" My face flushed red instantly. I wasn't flirting. I wasn't complimenting you. I was genuinely asking Becca. Becca frowned slightly, as if she was genuinely considering her answer. Do I need a reason? Some people just shine so brightly that when you see them, you want to give them the best of everything. The first time I saw you, you were being chased all over by Sue family's dog. It was pretty special. I was the one who whistled to call the dog away. I was going to check on you, but then I saw Amelia. She annoyed me, so I left. If I had known it was you, I wouldn't have turned around. If I had known it was Ethan, I wouldn't have let anyone else get ahead of me. That one turn, and all Ethan could see was Amelia, never noticing me again. I watched him run errands for Amelia, saw him get hurt, but still like her, watched them look like a couple, and I had no choice but to step aside. My expression shifted slightly, realizing Becca had helped me before Amelia even got involved. I waited for her to continue, but she didn't. Instead, she looked at me with clear, playful eyes. And then, "Why so eager to know my feelings, Ethan?" Becca stood up, pretending to speak casually. "That Whitaker family dog is usually very well behaved and never runs off. It listens to its owner." Becca took me to the police station to file a report, and the forum post remained up. Apparently, Marcus had tried to delete it several times, but it couldn't be removed. Just like when the forum's anonymous feature bugged out and got disabled that day, the comments had already turned against him. Becca and I had a good laugh over the content of the post. She scoffed at the part about me two-timing, coldly saying, "Amelia, a boat worth stepping on, please." The case was resolved quickly. Not only did Marcus have to issue a public apology, but I also received financial compensation. It wasn't much, but it was enough to free me from the Whitaker family's control, covering my tuition and living expenses. Marcus admitted to making up the rumors, which was also an indirect admission that he was the real illegitimate child. After that, his condition worsened. Adding insult to injury, the Whitaker family's business suddenly took a nosedive. But none of that mattered to me. I was enjoying my compensation from the Whitaker family, sipping on a carton of yogurt while typing on my phone. "Ethan, I know justice would prevail. Becca, and what about me?" I thought for a moment, smiled, and typed, "Becca will always lead me to justice." There was no reply for a long time. I set my phone aside and focused on my homework. When I remembered to check again, a new message had been sitting there for a while. Becca had sent a voice message. Her voice was sweet as it flowed through the speaker. "Ethan, what should I do? It feels like you're about to catch up to me." Under the camphor tree, the girl in the white dress, Amelia, had been standing for a long time. The dappled sunlight falling on her was soft. As I walked past, she called my name, stopping me in my tracks. I turned around, not understanding why. Amelia's expression was complicated, as if she felt a sense of relief, but also something else. "Sorry," she murmured, biting her lip. I never thought I would hear Amelia say those two words. She didn't look as hard to approach as Becca, but deep down, she was prouder than anyone, the kind of person who'd rather die than lower her head. Patiently, I asked, "Is it because you misunderstood that I was an illegitimate child?" Amelia stared at me for several seconds, her eyes welling up with tears. For everything that had happened before. Marcus had been telling me for years that he had a half-brother. I took his word for it, seeing that I showed no reaction. Amelia lowered her eyes, looking fragile like glass. "Have you met my little brother?" Before I came back in time, yes, I had. He was an adorable chubby kid who liked chasing after Amelia, but Amelia treated him indifferently, even cruelly. After a pause, Amelia spoke, reopening an old wound. "He's the child of the woman my father kept outside our home." It dawned on me that Amelia's conflicting attitude toward me was her way of projecting her own pain. She had even helped the Whitaker family deceive me because, in her eyes, it was something I owed them. Amelia. I suddenly called her name, giving her a gentle smile. She looked up, holding her breath. It had been a long time since she'd seen me smile at her. I could hear the bitterness in her heart, but I really, truly liked Ethan. I like you, I said. Watching as Amelia's eyes lit up, I let out a sneer. Did you really believe that? Disgusting! Amelia needed to understand that some things can't be fixed with a simple apology. I threw those same words back at her. Amelia staggered slightly, staring at me in silence and pain. Perhaps, in that moment, she finally realized what she had lost. Ethan? A lazy voice called from behind me, tinged with irritation. I turned around quickly to see Becca standing not far behind us, holding a strawberry-flavored ice cream. Her beautiful face was cold, and I suddenly felt like I had been caught cheating. Forgetting Amelia, I quickly walked toward Becca, just 2 steps away from her. She suddenly threw herself into my arms. I caught her, steadying her, but I heard her let out a small cry of pain. I immediately looked down. Did you hurt yourself? Where does it hurt? Becca took my hand, slowly guiding it to her chest, just above her heart. Under my palm, I felt her soft skin and the intense, rapid beating of her heart. I looked up to see that there wasn't a trace of pain on her face. Instead, she tilted her head, her expression playful and mischievous. It hurts right here. I sighed helplessly. Becca pouted. Dear Ethan, I can understand that there are other girls around you. After all, we're not officially together. But as your pursuer, I'm feeling a little insecure. So I've decided to change the word pursuer to something else. Can you guess what word? What word? Becca stomped her foot and gritted her teeth. Girlfriend. I couldn't hear any more thoughts, just the sound of 2 hearts beating loudly. Neither of us said a word as the sunlight poured down. In any case, there was still a long road ahead and a lot of life left to live. After all, this was a new beginning. In reality, the school queen Becca wasn't that hard to catch after all.